Bang On Balls Chronicles is a 3D platformer that draws inspiration from Mario, Sonic, Wanton Destruction, and Despicable Me. It's the first game from Exit Plan Games, a Polish studio that claims some AAA pedigree, but very much an indie outfit. I've played the Xbox Series X version for this review, but you can pick it up on PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One, PC, or Switch. But should you? Stick around and let me tell you a bit about the game. This is a traditional 3D platformer, a descendant of Mario 64 if you will, featuring 4 wide open and well-designed levels to jump and fight your way through. If that doesn't sound like a lot, that's a fair assessment. It isn't a huge game, but it also isn't expensive. Within those 4 levels and handful of mini-games, you'll find a lot going on. The levels are packed with things to discover, hidden areas, challenges, mini-bosses and puzzles. They reward you with collectibles that you can display on your character. The game features well over 400 items to collect, and those are split across the small number of levels. That should give you some idea of just how much is packed into each one. It's not all great news though. The plot that ties everything together is weak, and the core gameplay, while decent enough, misses any opportunity to really elevate the genre. You play as Bob. I suspect that stands for Bang On Balls as per the title, and I don't actually know if Bob is specific to your character or if every character in the game shares that moniker. All of your friends, foes, colleagues, acquaintances and pets are balls as well. When I said that the game takes inspiration from Despicable Me, I was referring to these balls. They're very minion-like in their mannerisms and behaviours, not dead-witted like the appropriated boomer memes, but minions very much as they are in the Despicable Me films. They provide light-hearted, slightly puerile, slapstick comic relief. Your plain, unstyled Bob starts off in a sort of film production studio that acts as a hub world. From there you can dive into various productions, portals that transport you to the different worlds you'll be doing stuff in. There's a central antagonist called Boss Bob, and for some reason you follow him into each themed level, complete some arbitrary tasks, then engage and defeat Boss Bob and move on. The game doesn't really attempt to offer a compelling central narrative. What's there is just a thin structure to link together the diversely themed worlds that you explore. And it's those worlds that carry the substantive qualities that the game has to offer. These worlds or levels are where I can say that Exit Plan have applied themselves fully. There are only 4 of them: a Viking invasion, a Cold War US versus Soviet space race, a pirate adventure, and an era-spanning amalgamation of Japanese culture. But each of them is very rich. They're simultaneously expansive and densely packed, rewarding exploration and experimentation. Each world has a simple core objective that's split across the map to be approached and tackled in any order, but they're packed with so much more besides that. Bang On Balls is a scavenger hunt and collectathon, and to that end, the wide open levels leave no wasted space. There's purpose to every area, pathways to find, areas to uncover, weird puzzles to decipher, containing set dressing, mini bosses to defeat, and always rewarding new cosmetics so you can style your balls. Each level is quite dynamic and packed with surprises, and each culminates in a genuinely impressive set piece. Level design is by far the greatest strength that the game has. Despite literally being a ball, Bob kind of shuffles to get around the world. The devs claim to have been inspired by Mario and Sonic, but gameplay feels closest to Mario in terms of speed, acceleration and momentum, the raw character movement. You can double jump and you can attack with a ground pound or a fairly short range dash attack on your right trigger. You can also hold that trigger to keep rolling. Weirdly, even in this mode, you're not really rolling. There's no sense of gravity or any other physics modeling. You can't hold the momentum of the dash or really play with that concept at all. You can roll up or down an incline without sensing any change of speed. That feels like a pretty big miss to me. You're a ball, so being a ball could and should be fundamental to the gameplay, but it really isn't. Putting aside what I think it should do and looking at what it actually does, the platforming seems reasonably tight to me. I'm not a big 3D platforming fan, so I'm not super qualified to speak about how it holds up relative to other games in the genre, but the platforming and combat feel competent to me, and landing jumps in 3D space is easy enough to judge. The camera is fairly rudimentary and demands manual control, but it isn't a massive hindrance. The game does try to remove any walls and objects that would occlude your vision, so it's definitely not perfect in that respect. And if combat was intended to be more challenging than it is, then the camera may have proven to be frustrating, but that's not really the case. The game also places some emphasis on destruction. Every world is packed with things that you can smash. Smashing stuff is always fun, so this adds a lot to the entertainment value for me. I should point out that the destruction isn't using any highly sophisticated physics modelling. This isn't a game where you can destroy supporting pillars and watch a structure collapse upon your enemies. It's just got a lot of objects that break apart and disappear when you hit them. Definitely preferable to having everything being static though. The core gameplay is fairly simplistic and could easily get repetitive, but the excellent level design carries it pretty well. The exploration and constant sense of discovery is what keeps things interesting. Weirdly, the game has very little in the way of instruction. You get a couple of how to control tooltips right at the start and markers for the core objectives in the game, but it leaves a lot for you to piece together yourself. As an example, some of the cosmetic items that you find in the world actually do have function attached, but they don't tell you what that function is. There's no explanation of it. I found a lemon slice shield that includes some kind of cooldown or perk, but I don't know what it does or how to activate it. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Experimentation can be fun, but sometimes it feels unintentionally obtuse, especially paired with the vaguely gestured story. The game also features 2-player split-screen co-op and 4-player online co-op, which would no doubt add to the fun, but unfortunately I haven't been able to check this out for myself.
I'm just so lonely! Fancy big balls!
Bang On Balls Chronicles is an Unreal Engine 4 game that spans console generations. It uses a relatively low-poly, low-texture art style, but it uses it well. And it shows a lot of ambition within those constraints, with some genuinely impressive transitions in its boss fights. The style is consistent, the levels packed with diverse art, pleasing lighting, lengthy draw distances, it's got a clean image quality, smart use of colour, and a high quality depth of field. There's loads of stuff that you can smash. It's not a bad looking game. It also doesn't perform all that well on the Series X. It targets 30 frames per second, which is a little underwhelming off the bat. Most of the time it holds up and it's smooth and stable, but when it chugs you will probably notice. I know I did. I don't think I encountered any notable bugs or crashes in my 10 hours with the game. You'd like to think that's just a reasonable expectation, but it's definitely not always the case, so I take that as a positive.
Some balls are held for charity and some for fancy dress.
Bang On Balls Chronicles is not a huge game. It only has those 4 main levels, and if you blast through the main objectives, you can probably get done in a few short hours. Those levels are expansive, and there's a handful of minigames to mess around with too. I spent about 10 hours rolling around exploring. I'd say if you're a completionist and you want all of the secrets and all of the cosmetics, then you can probably extract a good chunk more time than that. But the game doesn't particularly incentivize you to engage with it in that way. Strangely, it doesn't even tie trophies or achievements to a completionist approach. That really would have suited the Bang On Balls structure, but the allure of a repeating fart joke was apparently too strong. Every achievement is tied to holding the D-pad to fart in various locations in the game. No reward offered for solving the various secrets in the levels or collecting the 400 plus cosmetic items that are scattered around, except of course the joy of wearing them. I'm not a big achievement hunter myself, so this doesn't overly bother me, but it was a bit strange to complete the game and find my reviewing account still had 0 gamer score. On the plus side, all of those 400 and something cosmetic items are included in the game. There are no microtransactions or any other attempts at your wallet. You get the whole game, and you get it cheap. Depending on the platform, it's about 20 to 25 monies.
But when they're held for pleasure, they're the balls that I like best.
Bang On Balls is not aiming to be a AAA cinematic blockbuster. or to redefine the platforming genre. It's a fairly modest attempt to deliver an easy to pick up, energetic batch of entertainment. I place it at a C for the scope of what Exit Plan Games have aimed to deliver, and a 65 for their execution. The level design stands as the clear highlight for me, but there are definitely some missed opportunities. The fundamental concept of existing as a ball of destruction is passed up in favour of feeling like a certain plumber, and it lacks a core thread to really hold those good levels together. That lack of a core thread was significant to me, as by the end of the game I had an encroaching sense of being a bit fed up. I wanted it to end. I'm certain this can be at least partially attributed to the manner in which I engaged with it. I burnt through the content for the sake of completing this review, and I suspect that if I just bounced in between other games, it would have felt better overall. But a good story or some other central driving force would go a long way to keeping my enjoyment up. Bear in mind, my scores don't sit on the same scale as those used by most reviewers, so that C65 represents a lot of good in the game. If you are on the lookout for a well-designed traditional 3D platformer, then Bang On Balls Chronicles may well scratch that itch for you. If you found this review helpful, or you hate the format, or whatever you want to say, please leave a comment and let me know. And thanks again for watching all the way through.
It's my belief that my big ball should be held every night.